Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GLL Grand Slam Showdown, brought to you by WTF Moses and Matchroom, where we will be now hopefully seeing a bit of a contest, as it wasn't the last time, between EU and CIS, as EU seeks redemption from their 3-0 shutout in the previous round.
It's the anime comeback, right? At this point, they got 3-0. Now they've had a chance to warm up a little bit against Latin America, so EU's learned a couple of things. We've seen them reposition a little bit. Now it's just a matter of can they use that and capitalize going against the nemesis that is CIS.
And CIS is a formidable opponent. They've unfortunately lost to America, North America I should say, 3-0 in their own right. So EU is definitely feeling like they have a lot on the line. Having just dominated Latin America, they got to move up one and see if they can match North America.
It's been very, very dominant in these victories, too. It's always been, so far it's been like 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, 2-0. So maybe we'll get a little bit more spice as we move into a best of 3. But naturally, whoever wins this goes on to fight North America. So we could be seeing CIS versus North America again. Or what I venture to say a lot of people could be hoping for, which is EU versus North America.
That would be amazing. Let's take a look at the bracket and see how things have shaken out so far. We did see Latin America drop out. They did lose, so they're eliminated completely. And now EU is going to face off once again against CIS after losing to them in the upper bracket just yesterday. So we have 3 total matches. We haven't needed a full best of anything yet. We've only been seeing 3-0s. I don't think everyone has been lost or swept entirely at this stage.
Yeah.
So now we'll see if we'll need all 3 games for EU or CIS to move on to face North America in the semifinal, and then move on to fight Turkey, who have come into the grand final straight away from winning the Nations Royale previously. So Turkey kind of on ice right now, but North America waiting for their next opponent. We'll see how things shake out.
And CIS has been extremely dominant at this point. They've had great showings to this stage. I gotta say that these guys are really coordinated in how they move together, and it feels like they're coming in with strategies every single time. Meanwhile, EU came in a little bit looser last time, but now against Latin America have started to show, okay, we figured out, I actually talked to them and they were like, okay, we figured out some of our communication issues, restructured on how this is all going to work. Now it's a matter, is it going to pay off, or is CIS just going to continue with the game plan and keep showing that dominance?
And looking at the CIS team, the way they played, they actually, it's not just the streamers that we have here in person. We got Botulin here who's kind of getting set up. All these guys have played at a competitive level in the past. So Botulin's played. All of these guys actually on this team have either played together in some form or another, either on Avangar, in previous forms of Navi. But all the players at home, they're bringing in some heavy hitters as well.
Well, let's be real. CIS is a very strong group, and regardless of how you pull it apart.
Competitive region as well.
They're very competitive. They're very. Let's be honest. They got a lot of pride. They don't want to come in here. They don't want it to go like to a 2-1. They want to show up again and just have a dominant, just exclusive showing. And EU is going to have their work cut out for them, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And now they have to kind of, I think, bring their strategy forward that they did with Latin America. We saw in the previous games how they were looking more of a center-based strategy, containment in, I guess, what you could call rotation in the early goings of the match. And it really worked well for EU. So if they can replicate that strategy and hopefully execute it effectively, they have a really good chance of beating CIS. But CIS is no slouch. They are organized. They have lots of experience and firepower on their side. So I don't think it's going to be as easy for EU.
Well, that's the whole thing about this game mode, is once you get that first circle, being able to effectively say, okay, this is how we're going to set up, and then being able to execute off of it. There are so many communication lines that come into play, and we saw it in a couple of these games where if just 1 or 2 people don't join the system, then suddenly everything comes apart, because you need that extra couple of people in these strong defensive positions, in those choke points, trying to get a couple of those kills, because if you can get a couple of kills early, you can really turn the game on its head.
Well, the game goes so quickly as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really get past that 15-minute mark too often, and when we do, it's like this pockets of fighting kind of clearing themselves out. So most of the fighting and most of the match is decided within that first 10 minutes and in that first loot phase, which has been so important. So finding that strategic spot along the map, spreading out, and not getting picked apart. It's all a very delicate balance.
And that's what we've seen EU doing against Latin America. They capitalized very well off of the train, separated out, had a couple of people playing up towards the top in the high ground positions. Sure, it was a bloodbath around those one buildings just south of Severny, but EU playing along those hillside could look back down, support the players. That's what you want to set up. You just don't want to funnel in all into one point, because then one choke point just murders your whole team. And EU feels like they finally figured that out, and starting to capitalize off of that by moving and retreating together and making sure that they're playing into zones and always aware of how they can contain the enemy.
One benefit they have as well is they've already played today.
Yeah.
You know, they've only had a half-an-hour break between their last couple of games, so they got the comms worked out. Andy's certainly awake this time around. And for CIS, they're coming in kind of on ice. They played yesterday. They did lose. They're coming in without too much practice. They have to get set, and they only have 2 games to do it. So it's going to be really important for them to come out strong, I think, and I think EU is definitely going to have some momentum coming into this first game.
Well, also coming in off of a victory.
He's a picture of momentum, this man right here.
I mean, you can see everything about him screams competitor right now. But, I mean, EU is just coming off of a victory, and CIS is just coming off of a loss as well. That could be a factor for mindsets. So while CIS did have a great showing against EU earlier, maybe they just like, oh, well, what happened with North America? We've got to change stuff up. And whatever they change might actually be a vulnerability against how EU is evolving.
Absolutely. So we'll see. I think what maps we play as well. So for those of you who don't know, we kind of have a veto system where maps are decided based on player choice. So we might see Sanhok, we might see Vikendi, we could see any of the maps, but my guess is we're probably going to be sticking to Erangel, potentially even Miramar, and maybe some Sanhok as well.
And you guys are just tuning in now and you're like, what are you guys even talking about? This is the Showdown series that's going to be happening before the Grand Slam, naturally. So with this, after this ends is whenever we're going to move into all the pro matches that are going to follow this. But it's always nice to get a little bit of inter-regional rivalry to start everything off, get some of the streamers involved, and so that's what we've got going on. It is a 32 versus 32 regional competition.
And I think as we kind of lead into the main event, we'll call it today at the Grand Slam, this is a nice precursor to kind of show how, even though some of these guys that perform in the PEL and perform in the NPL aren't at this stage today, they still have an opportunity to play on the GLL platform. They can still compete with each other, and they can still represent their individual nations as they are unable to do so here.
I mean, I'm just excited to be here myself. Sweden has been awesome so far. It's my first time over here. I mean, everything about this place is just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, just walking around, and not to mention the whole landscape around where we're at the convention center here. There's, you know, it's a beautiful facility, not to mention very large. So if you're in the Sweden area, get your tickets, come down and join us for the Grand Slam kicking off today. But for now, we're kind of focusing on the Showdown aspect, and I'd be interested to know what map we play first. I imagine we're probably going to see Erangel.
I mean, wild guess. That's what I would assume as well. But I just want to see some curveballs. Maybe somebody bring in Vikendi at some point. Just try to see if maybe you have some strategies based off of that. Try to capitalize off of it. Bring something out that nobody's been expecting. Because right now, it's just been Erangel, Sanhok. Erangel, Sanhok, just repeat back and forth.
Well, I think it's the strategy of Erangel and the strategy of Sanhok are so polar opposites, especially in a game mode that's not standard to PUBG, right? So I think the pacing on Erangel is going to set the tone. So I would imagine we see Erangel first. We're not sure yet. We actually haven't had that confirmed, but so okay, it is confirmed. I've been corrected. It is absolutely confirmed. We're playing Erangel first. They're loading into the lobby, getting ready. So now the question is, where do we see those hot points? Now we haven't seen the plane path just yet, but Military and Pachinki have been 2 strongholds and 2 fire points that we've seen in the first couple of games in other regions.
And we have seen some crazy mean circles into plane path. We have seen it where it's popped off. Everybody's had to play around towards the south based off of drop, and then like a crazy north circle is so crazy rotations coming into play there. Or we've seen something where military base island, we caught that one yesterday where we saw North America set up those bridge camps. Again, playing to terrain is so important, and making sure you have a plan off of that first circle is what's going to set the pace for the game.
Looking at the lobby as we get set up, it looks like the CIS team is still getting their team situated, getting everyone split out into their individual squads. Now within these teams there are 5 squads. So the way that I've heard it set up is they kind of put all the squads into their own Discord channel, and then they have the individual streamers / generals kind of passing along comms to keep things nice and clean, which was a big issue for EU yesterday, where they had comms issues, and I think that was a big problem against CIS, and that might have led to their untimely demise in the upper bracket.
Well, I mean, we've all played PUBG, and there's nothing worse than when you're playing squads and you got that one guy that just won't stick with the system, and you're like, hey, we're going to go push over here, and next thing you know, he's over in Pachinki while the rest of the team landed in military base, right? Now imagine that on a scale of 32 people. If you don't keep the comms clean, communicate what's going on in every given stage of the way. I mean, I'm just caught up in the running story of where is Andy Pyro?
Yeah, no doubt. You know what? Shout out to Andy. If at one thing he is consistently inconsistent.
I mean, we're giving Andy a lot of crap right now, but let's be real. We know Andy really well, so that's how come we can get away with it. Like, we love the guy.
Well, Daniel, she is a competitor, and I can tell. Just, she wants to get this thing underway. She wants to get those guns firing, and Spreezy's no different. And she's talking with her chat. Spreezy's doing the same thing. They're all streaming right now. Spreezy making sure his shoes are tied so he doesn't trip over them in the heat of battle. But it's been really fun to watch these guys kind of interact, even between the two teams down on the stage, kind of talking about how things are going to go, friendly banter, if you will. Well,
it's always fun whenever you get some of the streamers together. Naturally, communities can kind of hang out with each other and chit-chat as the streamers are talking back and forth. So it just kind of makes for a very large community of people that can all get together and just rally behind a game that they love. That's why I always like these style of events. It's just really fun for everybody involved.
It doesn't matter what the game mode is either. These guys always want to win. And I'm the same way. If I'm playing a game mode, I want to win it, no matter what it is. If it's friendly, casual, competitive, I want to win. And these guys are absolutely no different. So I think that we'll see, at least on the EU side, most likely a conservative style. But I want to see how CIS matches that, because in Latin America's case, when they did want to get aggressive, they kind of took it right to them. But it didn't go very well after that. It was kind of like we have an idea, it's kind of formed, let's crash this one house and get blown up.
Well, let's be honest. You're kind of talking about everybody involved being competitive. If you're playing PUBG, you like to play sweatier style of game. That's the way it works. So everybody involved here, you know that there's some comms going back and forth. And I know whenever I was walking back down around them earlier, everybody's still kind of discussing strategies, because that's the key factor involved inside of this is, sure, you can be a crazy fragger, but whenever there's 32 people, it doesn't matter how good you are if you're not in the right spot. So now trying to get everybody on the same page, working together, again, getting those communities and everybody involved in the situation is the big factor for your victories in this.
Getting the quick ready check there from Andy, making sure he's ready to rock and roll. And we are getting loaded into the match, so we're just a couple minutes away here. Matt, looking at the plane path for those at home that can't see, we're basically going to be going from the north to the south, almost straight through the middle of the map. So I expect to see some early jumps around that Severny area, likely around Rozhok as well for the EU side, and maybe for CIS they could potentially do the same thing. So they don't really know what either side is going to do. We might see some early fighting here in these two spots.
Yeah, the early plane path goes from Severny back down near Ferry Pier, essentially. So now it's a matter of really the commitment on which region is going to which spot, because we've seen that happen a couple of times where it's like, okay, our strategy is going to be to drop Pachinki, and the next thing you know, another group drops right on top of you. So being able to react to that and win those early skirmishes, especially in this, could be very, very important, because I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but losing one or two members very early in this is an extreme detriment into the later stages of the game.
Well, not to mention the loot phase. I think that was a mistake that happened yesterday with multiple different teams on both sides, where they could not get their loot phase underway early because they were hot dropping each other. We saw that boot camp game where the Latin American team was just shooting each other because they had no idea who was who for the first minute or two, and just the mad dash to get weapons when everyone's landing around you in a 32 versus 32. That's like the hottest boot camp you'll ever see in your life.
Well, let's be real. It's not necessarily the most strategic thing in the face of the earth, but man, it's fun to watch. I like it whenever it happens. Just a little bit of the chaos that comes into play and trying to figure out how to react into that, because even Latin America, whenever we were watching it yesterday, that hot drop around Pachinki, I thought that they were done for. They managed to retreat back over, get inside that trench, and then used it to their advantage, turn the fight on its head. So again, playing out of those disadvantaged positions, one of the things I love to see, just everybody committing to a strategy and it paying off inside of PUBG.
Well, game number one underway. The plane is in the air. We are going north to south, basically through the center of the map. Nowhere will be off limits to anyone right now, and we'll see how the strategy plays out as EU and CIS face off once again. And we are not going to see any movement early from the European team, and I think CIS is just waiting to see where the European squad is going to go, which I imagine is going to be mostly around the center of the map.
Looks like CIS has decided that Georgia Pool is going to be their home. Meanwhile, looks like maybe a little bit of Rozhok, School, Pachinki could be where we see everybody from EU that they're going to try to go for, but I think that's kind of looks like the line of demarcation. Everybody's just using the plane path. One team is going east, another team is going west.
talking to Spreezy between the games, they basically said that they're going to repeat the strategy they used against Latin America in the previous rounds, and that's essentially what we're seeing right now, where military base, Pachinki, Rozhok in the center of the map are going to be completely controlled by EU, but there is a very similar pattern on the CIS side, so we'll see now who gets the benefit of the loot quicker, but everyone's going to be on the main island for the most part, save for about half the EU squad.
So now you can see everybody making their drops across different parts of the map. Really, with the separation out, the way it's come through, I think that circle could be a big factor if we see it like hard shift either towards the west or towards the east. That's going to be a really telling factor, and yeah, it's going to be back over towards the east, so this is going to favor EU. Now, everybody from CIS is going to figure out how they want to handle this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of those Georgia Pool guys make the push up and around Stolber. EU has to be expecting that as well, and could they potentially set a trap?
The trap aspect, I think, is it can be a little bit more difficult to execute. Unless they want to set up, EU could basically get off on the other side and come back around to center. So I don't know if we'll see the same level of trap strategy here in the first part of this game. But I think it's going to be a slower start than what we've seen in previous matches.
Well, naturally, as we're moving forward, everybody's getting a little bit more of a feel. Whenever we start off with one of these game modes, it tends to be a little bit more Wild West, right? Everybody's just kind of hot dropping each other, trying to figure out how everything works. But then like its own meta starts to establish between the different regions. So naturally, everybody's going to be moving into this a little bit more comfortable and in control, I would say. Except for Finn,
who's in the ocean.
Yeah.
Help.
Somebody was AFK.
I need a rope.
Plane came through. You can see. Always got to be one of them.
So in South and George Bowl in the entirety, it's going to be a relatively easy loot phase. And for the CIS squad, now it's a matter of how they want to rotate in the first portion of this game. I wonder if they want to try and get center, or if they're just going to kind of maybe poke and prod and see where they find some weakness, which CIS is so good at, where they'll just kind of, see if there's one or two men in the house or crash and try and split apart the European squad, who relatively is spread apart from a pretty long contingent. So if there's anyone early leaving that George Bowl area, or even on that western side, they might be able to find center relatively easily.
Well, it feels like we've got maybe 2 to 3 groups that could be functioning together for CIS. We've got the ones that are around Georgia Pool, then we've got a group that's around Gatka, kind of separated all the way back down towards Primorsk. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the guys back down towards the south, like Primorsk and Ferry Pier, maybe being one contingent, then the Gatka group being another one. Or they could all just decide to rally together and move. But moving as one big group, I would say, feels like the most dangerous thing that you can do in this game mode.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've seen it rather in previous matches where UASs and dossiers get picked apart. I mean, there's so many players that you could just trip over, and next thing you know, you're instantly dead, and that's 4 players off the board. So just the availability of vehicles and how you spread themselves out.
Wait, King of Pachinki isn't actually in Pachinki proper.
He's close.
He's close. I don't know why this bothers me as much as it does. He should be like smack dab in the middle.
You don't leave the king in the capital, man.
I guess that's true. Maybe that's where his castle is at.
Because of lots of property around Pachinki.
I mean, it's technically
he's at his
Pachinki,
summer house or something like that.
Right? I mean, I guess this build, like, where does Pachinki technically end?
He's actually headed to his estate just past the Yellow Cabins.
And hey, who would have thought? There's a red zone on Pachinki.
That's why he doesn't live there anymore, dude. The weather sucks.
Oh my God, I know. It's just like always the worst hail. All right, so let's see. You can see it pretty calm at the beginning. Nobody has died as of yet because
there's no rush.
Nobody's really in. This is like kind of opposite of everything that we've been casting so far.
Because it's sweaty now.
I know.
Because this is if you lose, you're out. So there's no lower bracket after this.
I mean, this is whenever all the try-hard pants come on. Everybody wants to go for it.
I hear a flare gun.
Was it flare gun? I think it was red zone, right?
No.
Was it?
Well, there's similar sounds, I think. Doesn't matter. You know what? I'm going to err on the side of the red zone considering we're in Pachinki, but.
I just love how you can see like one little bird that's flying through the middle of the red zone. And it amuses me so much if like the bird just blows up in the middle of it.
Yeah, hiding in a shack, waiting for it out. VZ's, he's got no fear.
VZ's a pro player. He doesn't have to worry about red zones, right?
You know what? If you pretend it's not there, it can't hurt you.
Yeah, that's right. You punch it away. You can see he's like, as long as you continue to punch, red zone can't hit you. New pro strats right there.
Just waiting now for this first circle to start to close. And this is going to force most of CIS into the circle. So this is where things get a little bit interesting if you're in that western side of the map. There's a couple of CIS players just kind of making their way in slightly around the bridges and around the Gatka fields. But there's 90%, I would say, or so of the players are still making their way in.
Well, EU looks like they might be opting towards the centering strategy. We see a lot of them around that Potato Mountain area. Meanwhile, we got CIS already starting to do a little bit of scouting, trying to see where it could be vulnerable. And I think that based off the path that they're moving through, Constantine should be pretty okay.
come to a stop, do a little bit of a scout. I mean, they might be wanting to grab onto this first compound in the Reds, just to kind of chill as the first circle closes and everyone gets in their vehicles, hopefully without any casualties, as we've seen so often as players mount up. But now the question is, on the military island, will the players down there start to move early?
I don't know. Like,
They might be there actually as a contingent to make sure that actually CIS players can't go south and get around the middle.
They might be like a safety play too, depending on how the circles go. Because I mean, while almost everybody believes it's going to be on the main island, there is a chance that we might actually see a little bit of military base come into the circles. Well, the way circles have been, why not at this stage is the only thing I can say. Everybody that's going to be playing inside the Grand Slam this afternoon, I feel bad if these circles continue playing out the way that they are, because they're going to make for some rough circles. But again, I like watching those.
Waiting now again for CIS to actually decide where they want to go so we can see what's going to happen. And it looks like it's going to be on that center western side, just to the south of Pachinki, where things are a little bit easier to navigate and avoid those open fields, which would be so deadly as Pachinki continues to receive red zone after red zone. Shocker, I'm sure.
Yeah, with this, you can see that CIS looks like they're going to opt back down towards the south of Pachinki, like you were talking about. But we've got a couple of stragglers for EU. Look like they're trying to grab a couple of vehicles. Could put them in a little bit of a dangerous spot. But meanwhile, Art just hanging out, doing what you got to do during red zones.
Oh my God, that was pretty goddamn close.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Whenever you're in one of those shacks, you're just like, okay.
You can still get down there if you're within line of sight of the bomb. It's just like grenades. Sometimes they'll just reach out through a window and grab you. The way that CIS has set themselves up on the southern side actually gives them great vision to come out of Pachinki. But for the most part, EU has actually left that. The king is back in his castle from the looks of it. But now some initial fighting breaking out, at least some long distance poking.
All right. Well, another red zone coming into play. At some point, I'm curious if we're actually going to see anybody die to the red zone, because we haven't.
I would love it
yet.
Ansvar thinks so.
I want to see it. I mean,
or Wilhelm.
We'll have to kind of keep an eye on how these red zones play out, because there is so much action that is happening right now, Moses.
Yeah, and you know, this red zone is dead smack in the middle. Like, this is an open area. They're just going to have to hope that the bombs don't land on them. Going to maybe have to spread out a little bit, as I'm sure they're very happy to continue to receive red zone after red zone. McAdow doesn't want any part of this. He wants to make sure he's going to stay maybe separated from his vehicle, but the bombs start to land. That's pretty close.
Yeah, that's the red zone things, though. Always close, but never giving us the gratification that we want. I don't think that I've ever cast somebody dying to a red zone.
Well, let's wait and see what happens.
Anticipation.
Come on.
Come on. Do it.
Circle 5, you're looking pretty lonely there. You know, you could use a bomb in your lap.
I know. Look, they just want to be friends with you, Circle 5. That's all. And nothing.
Unfortunate. It's all right. We'll see more. Looks like some more red zone action on the other side. This is on the safety band, however. For those of you who don't know, there's actually 100 meters. Oh, baby, look at that circle. It just shifted it down to the southeast. That's going to be interesting for you. That actually goes in the favor of EU. But yeah, Matt, there's a 100-meter band along the outside of a red zone that is actually safe.
I did not know that.
Bombs don't land there.
So from this point forward, whenever I'm playing with my friends, I'm going to just start messing with them.
Yeah, just send them into the red zone, but not too far in.
Just drive in right along the edge of it. But it looks like CIS is already capitalizing off of this. They've got themselves a little bit of a point that they can play inside of it. So sending out an expeditionary squad to get a little bit more information and can kind of bisect through this circle and might actually find themselves in a favorable position depending on how we play. Since the canal is still in play, it can make for some interesting spots, as it looks like CIS is doing a push up back towards where a couple of EU players can be at.
They want this coastal compound, I think, or at least close by, as everyone kind of makes that mad dash to center. And now the pressure starts to build around the farm. As you can see, CIS very, very close together. I almost said EU United. EU is very close together as well, but not nearly as dense as the CIS squad. Now, this could be a battle for this small compound outside the farm, as CIS is now kind of forming a firing line.
This is a terrifying thing. If you're a scout and you're on one of those motorcycles and you drive up and suddenly you see like 20 vehicles driving in front of you, but looks like Mobsy has decided to commit. There are a couple of CIS players around here, and he is firmly outnumbered. Lots of shots going to go, and he's just going to get taken down, and that's a call out saying, okay, don't go to this building.
Surprise, there's 15 people here.
All right, VZ. VZ wants nothing to do with this. Looks like he's going to hang out with the king of Pachinki over there. But CIS, that is a ton of people in this location.
It's an interesting little compound as well. There's a lot of high, low, a lot of ways to get around. You can see the ridge in the center you can use. But it looks like CIS is going to just kind of stay on the northern side of this thing. The southern side of this compound. but they're going to take it over, and that's going to mean like it's going to be a small like farm v farm compound, as now it's a bit of a jousting match between these two sides.
Well, here's the problem though. CIS is firmly all committing to this location, and that's allowing EU to kind of separate out. EU actually has closer towards the center of the circle as well. So if we see any rotations where CIS has to move from this spot, it could be a bloodbath very quickly. As you can see, EU is just setting up dividing lines to contain it. EU's had this happening so many times, they know what it's like to be in the situation.
And the containment was a big part of the strategy against LATAM. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do the same thing here. They've only got a couple of players on that northern side who are already retreating back. I think they're more inclined to just take this as a across the field kind of one-to-one fight. But then it means whoever gets the edge first is going to be able to push first.
It makes for a little bit of trouble as well, because it really puts a lot of, I guess, into the attrition phase where you're going back and forth and you're just downing members, trying to knock off helmets, body armors. That's kind of what it looks like both of these teams are committing into, as well as a giant amount of players inside of a shack. That just seems like a recipe for potential disasters. One grenade could do so much damage there.
These are the firing lines we were talking about between the two sides on farm. CIS is more of a united front than EU is at this stage. But there's some players still in the back line playing defense so they don't get encircled. So I kind of like the strategy aspect from EU here. They have not allowed anyone to get behind them, but CIS is not really a sneaky region. They just want to go straight at you.
I mean, we're back to old school, like World War I style military strategy.
Start digging trenches.
It's just lines. It's like Firo Spreezy, that's your job. Get out there, start digging the trench. New circle pops, and oh, if you're a CIS fan,
yeah, this is where they now kind of have to hold the line, because I imagine CIS now is going to try and get up and over on the northern side through the Milta Pass. And they do have the perfect setup, does EU, to just kind of hang out. But it looks like they're going to, again, instead of letting the circle do the work for them, they're going to give up some ground and try and stay center.
I don't know if CIS has vision on this, though, with the way that the hills and the terrain is laid out. They might not be aware that there's the full retreat from EU. Oh, hey, just give yourself
there you go.
Tap there. That's good teamwork coming in play. But now I think that looks like everybody from EU is committing just a little bit west of Milta. So just like you were saying, CIS doing that curve around up towards the north.
And that's the only real option. They're going to maybe have to come in on the North Milta side, but EU is going to probably spread out and take as much of the real estate as they can, because if they get on that northern side of Milta, they should be able to hold them out in the fields and really do some damage. There's a couple of key compounds. Garage building here is one. A little bit further up, there's another garage building. Those are going to be two very key compounds to hold on to, and EU is going to have first pick.
Well, EU is also starting to play towards the map and what's potentially going to happen. Going for their centering strategy right now, there's still a lot of water. About half the circle is still water right now, so they have to expect that shift away. They know it's probably not going to be along the bridge, so now they have firm control of what's probably going to be the in-game circles, and CIS is going to have to bully their way into those fights and try to get some level of control. And it's just, you can see with the sight lines that EU has, there's nowhere for CIS to stop.
This first garage building is going to go to CIS. That's going to be their foothold. But it's going to be difficult for them to do anything there. They're kind of being forced into a situation where there's only a couple of buildings they can use. But it looks like they're going to crash right into Milta, and the EU is going to allow that, which is going to give CIS a lot of buildings to use as they kind of push forward.
I feel like this is a misplay from EU. They should have expected somebody to try to go around and get into that Milta area, and they just left it completely alone. No defensive line at all. Just a couple of members, I would say, just playing towards the north of Milta. Could have bought them a little bit more space, because you can see CIS has just circled them entirely and has now managed to find themselves a good spot to play from if they can get the members back down into this position.
And now it becomes kind of a circle coin flip. EU does have the center position, so they should still have most of their team in the circle once it finishes closing. But you can kind of see just how pressure begins to mount between these two sides. And I think if CIS can kind of get situated in Milta, they could potentially drive a wedge between the two halves of the EU squad.
We're talking about sweaty gameplay, Moses. Only one person has died at this stage.
Yeah, this is...
Everybody is doing such a great job at making sure that they get their reses up. Just great play from both of these regions.
And they haven't really been in a position where downs can be finished, aside from maybe a couple of individual situations. But I think one of those players, I don't remember who was actually killed. Actually, nothing's going to change here either in this new circle. The water does come out, and a little bit of expeditionary force here for EU.
It's Mordello again. He seems to be the point man for EU, trying to find those vulnerable points, trying to sneak in off of it, but grenades are going to start coming out from everybody from CIS. Going to make it a little bit more dangerous, but you can see EU, Slugero, and the rest of those crew, they can kind of protect the backside of Mordello, so now it's just a matter of can he make it over for this res, as Hugh is going to get taken down off the side.
Mordello's going to jump on his bike and get the hell out of there.
That's the good strategy right now, I would say. It's a little dangerous. He is all by his lonesome, but a couple of members from EU back down towards the south. VZ did manage to encroach back over towards Milta, so you're starting to see EU getting a little bit more aggressive, trying to get territory control.
This is a cool little setup, I got to say. They're using this road as kind of the no man's land at this stage, as EU has kind of taken the southern side of the compound, still trying to contain CIS as best they can, which has been the strategy they've been employing, sending a couple of players further to the north just to make sure no one can sneak around, and again playing for the circle in the center position. I think we're going the distance here, man.
I mean, this is very dangerous. When you have this many people all looking back and forth, imagine how hazardous it is. Every single time you go for a peek to take any shot, you could be shot from so many different angles. It's so hard to collect information. Look at the tracers just going everywhere right
it's like
now.
Star Wars. That's what it looks like to me.
It's just so hazardous and so risky, as you can see. Actually, several members from EU starting to get a couple of downs back down towards the south.
Yeah, but they're not in a position to be finished. They can get res pretty easily, I believe.
I think it kind of comes back to that, like, the attrition that we were talking about beforehand. If you can get rid of a little bit of, like, the armor and the helmets at this stage, especially at this vulnerable point, this seems like where EU might try to make their capitalization. And CIS is also getting a little bit more aggressive, playing around where we saw Mordello a second ago.
I think the way that EU has kind of taken map control in the center, there's a giant line through the center where behind them is farm. So if the circle does shift in their favor once again, it is going to be very difficult for CIS to come across this road.
Yeah, I mean, with the map and the layout of it, you can see that EU is very firmly aware, okay, let's try to make a play off of this. But with as friendly as we've started to see this, I wouldn't be surprised if we just see another crunch back down towards the middle. So it's going to be continued fire lines. And again, that road just right through the middle of this is going to be I think that's the definition of point. Yeah. Whenever people have to start crossing that road is where it's going to end up being a little bit more bloody.
And once the circle shifts, we will have a better idea as to how this game will go out. But CIS is getting more and more aggressive. Yeah. A couple of players have moved across. You can see in the middle of the map as they've taken the yellow compound away, as they get a couple downs and even a couple of finishes on the EU side. And CIS has maintained all of their players so far, and it looks like they're going to get a nice foothold here.
We're getting a little bit more control, but it's just 2 members, and that is a ton of EU players. So while they did manage to get that one yellow building, it's extremely risky for them to push any further forward, as just look at how many EU players are just holding that defensive line. Nobody really has a need for EU right now to actually push them out of that location either.
Well, not to mention they can start throwing grenades from that foothold as well, either into the buildings, but the same thing can be said for CIS as the grenades start to go off. Danu does go down. So I imagine now with the circle about to close, CIS just wants to have some opportunity to cross early.
Just having some type of option, as it's pressure from the south for EU and a little bit of pressure from the north from CIS. It looks like CIS has just decided that they're just going to not allow EU to be over here. This is a full commit, just charging into these buildings, and they're going to be able to wipe those guys out inside of at least that building. But look, there's still 10 more people following back behind this. Rock, you're in a little bit of trouble, man. You got to figure out what you're going to do from the spot.
Well, it's a priority position with the circle changing now. It's basically centered, and it's now EU going to have to try and crash south as CIS is trying to break through on the southern side. They still have a fairly significant player advantage, 31-26 right now in the favor of CIS. And Spreezy's just looking for any help, but they've taken this the southern approach by force.
Well, also towards the north, where we saw that one yellow building, there's been about 6 or 7 people have now pushed over. CIS is starting to get aggressive. It feels like they're getting more and more control over these territories, as everybody from EU is just having to slow retreat. We did see them do that against Latin America, and it paid off. But every single time EU is having to retreat, this time they're losing members.
Well, they haven't had the benefit of the circle shifting hard in their favor, and that's gonna, kind of slow things down. They're still kind of maintaining their line, but it seems more precarious, especially on the southern side.
Nice shot coming out from X-Chris there. Getting a little bit more control, at least slowing down. Naturally, taking down Constantine is also going to be very good. Always gratifying whenever you get to kill somebody that you know over there. But let's see, King of Pachinki taking a couple of pot shots across. EU does have control over this hillside, but again, slowly and steadily being forced away from that road where we thought it was going to be the big bloodbath moment. CIS is just starting to bully EU back away from it.
And you know what? There's a lot of players coming back into the previous compounds, maybe just trying to play all four corners of the circle to see if they can hope that the circle goes in their favor. But ever since that, it seems that EU's strategy of playing the circle is allowing CIS to continue to get a man advantage.
The question I have is what really does EU have to play with at this point? You can see that they're playing against these little ridges and whatnot, but if CIS manages to get any firm footholds and continue to push forward, they're going to have very easy kill lines. Like one guy could potentially take down 2 to 3 people before he goes down, and that's just going to turn advantage even more, as again, more and more CIS people just being able to cross over that road. And I think back down towards the south,
I think CIS is getting the advantage here.
Yeah, CIS is starting to bully both sides of this, and EU is just getting caught out. They're not surrendering their territories properly, and they're just losing member after member at every given stage along the way. Look, back down here towards the south, it's just EU players just getting dominated and forced out of these spots.
Yeah, CIS is just leaking across. Chris has been doing a good job with the bolt rifle, but he's now going to be wiped out of this game, as it's now a 6-player lead in the favor of CIS, and the circle is about to shift once again, and this is going to be the deciding circle, I think, Matt.
Look at this. CIS has only lost a few players in these pushes that have come through here, and they've been making aggressive plays.
Yeah, they've been the aggressors the entire match.
That shows great coordination. They pushed north and south at roughly the same time to distract everybody back down towards the middle, make a little bit of chaos in the comms. Now everybody's starting to get into grenade range, so this is where it gets really, really bloody, but I mean, really, it feels like we still have the circles half and half.
EU has to come north on the southern side now, and so does CIS, but they've got the benefit of the Milta Ridge to use, and this is where things get really, really precarious for EU, and in the sense that they don't have a lot of cover to work with, Matt. They're going to have to either move their vehicles, which is going to leave them very open to quick deaths, but they're right next to each other here in the smokes as well.
Kiss right up in the face of 2 members of EU. Spray's going to go down. Get that one. Should be aware. Flush easy there. Now it's just 1 member left back over here for EU, and that is a ton of CIS guys still on the hunt and looking. And hiding out in the smokes at this stage, that's just a dead giveaway for you.
I figured they would condense north, and that's exactly what EU is trying to do, but CIS is coming to meet them. And with the advantage in manpower, I think this is really starting to feel like a CIS runaway.
Well, with everybody having to just kind of cluster around towards the north for EU, there's just a little bit of a ridge there, and you can see as CIS starts to make the push back over into this, it's just putting more and more pressure. Spreezy's trying to hold the line, gets one, but gets taken down as well. That's going to be a very difficult crawl back. As you can see, this is what EU's having to play in right now.
This is the deciding fight right here, Matt, on the northern side. EU is not have all their manpower on one side. They've got a couple of players down on the south side, but CIS is sending everything towards that region. Nades coming across, a lot of fire as well, and EU is very, very clustered. And even though they are trading, it looks like EU is just now down 10.
It just becomes a question for me, when does CIS manage to get into grenade range? They're getting close enough now. Laguero's taking a lot of damage as the grenades are popping off next to him. But really, CIS hasn't done a firm commitment back along those ridge lines. If they move forward probably about another 10 meters, but then that puts them in a kind of a no man's land of their own. They could get so much off of these grenades, but I gotta say, it really just feels like they don't even need grenades. They're just spraying down everybody. As look at that, Maga managed to come back behind them and get a nice couple of kills.
EU is completely scattered right now. They just cannot get anything to go. The front line is completely decimated. Now CIS is encircling them on the eastern side. And not to mention, even if the players were left on the south, they've got CIS players down there forcing them out to the open fields. And with all the players in the downstate, this is really feeling like CIS is going to take this game.
I mean, it is 26-13 right now, and everybody from EU back towards the north is still just trying to defend, but it is just member after member that's dropping across their line. They just don't have the numbers to compete with what's going on, and CIS is doing such a great job of just recovering. Every single time they get down, 3 people step up, cover them, allow for the rest. At no point do they have to stop. Look at the control that they have along this hillside.
They're flushing them now, man, and CIS, they're in full kill mode. And even though there's a couple of bright spots for EU in the kill feed, they're down to 3, 25 man, 22 plus man advantage, only 1 left alive.
It's Morrow.
It's a complete rout here for CIS, and they are completely dominating.
Morrow is the last member alive and is completely surrounded. Finally got spotted off over towards the west, and there you go. No surprise coming out with the control from CIS, just dismantling EU there.
Really impressive showing there. It was kind of a slow setup, but as soon as that Milita circle started to shift away and EU had to basically shift their front both north and south. They just couldn't keep it together.
I mean, it feels like, again, whenever EU and where they positioned at, they didn't protect Milton. CIS, they took that. They just grabbed that opportunity, rotated around the north of EU, and then suddenly the defensive line that EU had set up just didn't have the same amount of worth and had to redirect back over a direction that they were not expecting. And again, just great shots from CIS, buying control every single stage of the way.
It was very strategic the way the game played out. I liked it. It was kind of like a chess match. Like they were both kind of vying for control over different areas of the map, rotating and slowly moving their forces around. I really enjoyed the way the game played out, but at the end of the day, I think from an individual matchup standpoint, they just could not hang with the individual firepower of CIS.
Well, EU is starting to show more and more. It feels like they're getting more and more comfortable in this mode. I mean, we saw, like you're saying, it was a chess match back and forth. There was a lot of strategy being involved. So therefore, we know they were talking about EU really wanted to fix their comms. Looks like they've managed to solve that, but now can they just get the strategy that they so desperately need, because they have got to win this next game if they want to stay in this event.
Absolutely. It's a best of 3, and if they go 2 out, you're out. And that's the end of it. So I think that the EU side was a little bit too passive, like they were really focused on positioning, and CIS's aggression was just hard for them to contend with as the game continued to progress.
The coordination from CIS in that aggression, we saw them up towards the north kind of playing around, then they made that hard push back down towards the south, and the moment that this started working, the north just pushed as well. And it was just like suddenly EU was just caught in this trap, and everybody from EU just had to push to the north because they were losing the south so hard.
Well, there's only one game left if you're EU, and you have to win it. If you lose this one, you're out. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back for what could be the final game of EU's stint here at the GLL Grand Slam Showdown.
Tool for the man who's screwed, don't make it come in handy. Everyone want be by the beach now, reach where the sun and it's sandy. But those who can't, they get hurt, then hate, then go on like a pansy. And that's cool, but stay over there, window to the wall, yeah, way over there. Cause my guys don't play over here, make a man say touche over here. And they start getting wet over stairs, and that's not about a female set over glares. You break down what the beef's about. My guys will be like, who cares? Cause we don't deal with the talk thing. Less it's money you're talking. And I ain't on about no phone bill. Plus we're more about walking. Still can't stand man walking. Man know that we're also flying. Still ain't trying to catch no bird. All off catching an eye. All blessed if you mind yours. Only want a bird that soars. Every effect has a cause. Know when it rains it pours. Man one push out the chest. Pride make a dumb man flex. But take time to get test. You don't wanna make man vex. 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 Make man deflate the chest. You don't wanna make man vex. You don't wanna make man vex. You don't wanna make man vex. Make man deflate your chest.
So mad that they're red in the face. Cause what we on is something beyond. Every song comes sweeter than butter pecan. See, we dig deep, way down in the soul. And the words just seep
battling a man, a fight to the finish, we can war it to the end if you like, cause you and them see that time's not a thing here when you've been blessed and born to the life. See me, I got a sample of the plan on the 4K image, you can see me spitting bars on the mic. I always go hard, so you better go home, cause I heard you saying that I'm wrong when I'm right. See the flash of the light, see the ding of the bell, for the bright from the gun and I'm gone. You best believe that I know where I'm from, see the man, them already know that it's on. We all know the hard work pays off, everybody stays on. No one on my team is ever thinking of the days off. I do it when God willing, furthermore I want the whole team chilling. It's a graph that they don't see, I know that I won't be here to be sad at the end. That we can do it for real right here, no pretending. When I'm kicking the ball like Beckham is bending. Whatever the weather, I keep it together, I keep getting better. And nobody on this planet can tell me otherwise. Open up your eyes, you better recognize I'll be set on the stage, ready to go. The way that I know you don't know me, I'm the winner. Expert in the game, can't mean I'm no beginner. I'm a win. I'll be set on the stage, ready to go. The way that I know you don't know me, I'm the winner. Expert in the game, can't mean I'm no beginner. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the GLL Grand Slam Showdown, where EU is one game away from either perpetuating and staying in the tournament or having it all end at the hands of CIS. Once again, I'm WTF Moses, joined by Matrim. Matt, it was an exciting and interesting game number one that's really set the stage here for a pivotal game number two.
I mean, it was extremely strategic from both teams, and that's what we wanted to see inside of this, is the evolution as it slowly moves forward. Sure, it's fun to run and gun, but have that point whenever you're like, okay, let's get control of these territories, let's try to make sure that we're using our generals properly, and then execute some cool strategies. And I gotta say, it really feels like CIS has figured out how to do that.
And I think that if we stay on Arangel for game number two, it will be maybe more of the same depending on the circle, but we also might see Sanic or Vikendi come out, something that we have anticipated but not have seen just yet. So we can see the EU squad trying to regroup. They felt very good after their dominant performance over Latin America earlier today, but now I think they're starting to feel the pressure once again. Will their strategy continue to hold, where they're kind of trying to grab that center position and hold position at all costs? They did not really seem interested in engaging straight on with CIS.
That's what I wanted to see. We see these great defensive lines get set up from everybody from EU, but then they never capitalize off of them. Whenever they start to get the pressure, they just continue to retreat. At some point, you've just got to make the call and be like, okay, we need to win this fight. This is going to be our pivotal point, and try to make some type of playoff of that, because that's what you see CIS doing so well. They'll make a pushover, win a fight, and then capitalize off of that on another part and a different fight across the map.
And CIS is not interested in slowing down once they feel they have an advantage either.
God, no.
So, and that's just been kind of the tale of that region for so long, both in professional and regular play, where they will absolutely come after you if they feel that there's an opportunity to take ground.
Whenever they feel they have a momentum, or whenever they have that confidence point that finally is like, I see the opportunity, they will just grab it, and then they will use that to just strangle the other team. And I gotta say, it's kind of beautiful to watch at this level with this many players, to see it executed so well like that. It's just so much strategy involved inside of it, but we are making our way back over towards Sandhawk, which can lead to, let's say, colorful fights at the very beginning of the game.
This is going to mean that EU is not going to have the same amount of time and the same amount of space in order to implement their positional strategy. And I think if you're CIS, this is going to be the premium choice, I guess, if you want to play aggressive, depending on what happens with that first circle. And considering the northern part of this playing path, you guys can't quite see it just yet, but it's basically sticking from the left side middle all the way up through Cal, and that's going to make things very centered around, again, places like Boot Camp and Paradise, and maybe this time CIS can test that middle position right away.
Well, I'm just hoping that people watch the earlier rounds, and you don't want to commit to trying to play off that western island.
Yeah, it's hard to get off there.
You just end up containing yourself. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see almost everybody push back down towards the south once the plane is now up and in the air. So with this, we're going to start making our way back over into the round, I believe. So now then, this is EU's last chance. Where are they going to commit to drop at? CIS, how are they going to try to counter this? It all comes down to this round for them and how they're going to try to capitalize. You can see not a lot of space up towards the north. If you opt into playing up towards the north around Camp Alpha, you're going to end up so contained. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of people going back down towards the south, but looks like we might actually just see a west south. We might just see a west and east split coming through here, as everybody from CIS just looks like they're trying to getting control over the western part of the map.
We'll see. Looks like EU is going to get free reign on Boot Camp once again, but CIS is going to be chasing people into Painan. So this is going to force EU further back onto that main island, and look at that control. That entire western side map is essentially going to CIS right now, and it looks like we are going to have some fighting around Painan, where EU is going to get potentially strangled here because they don't have nearly enough players to contend with how many CISs around them.
I mean, EU did commit over towards Boot Camp, so they got a ton of people over there. They might be able to come down and provide some reinforcement, but what? That's maybe 6, 7 people that are down around Painan right now. Looks like everybody from CIS was content to let them have that good awareness on who's dropping next to them, retreating away from it, instead could just contain around it. But looks like everybody's kind of carved out their own little spot where they want to play at right now, and not too much early game skirmishes could be happening.
Oh, rough.
Reverse of what we saw in the earlier rounds, and this is going to favor CIS very heavily.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, it was interesting to see how CIS backed off of Painan so quickly. They recognize that you do not want to get into a looting fight in a place like Painan. It's just too RNG at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
So they're very happy, considering how much control they have and how much vision they have everywhere on the map, to just loot in the trash compounds on the southern side and then condense on that top third and just chill, because they can have control over 2 main bridges. This is a huge advantage to CIS.
I'm curious to see what these guys at Boot Camp from EU are going to do. There's a lot of them in that position. Naturally, that can be a rally point as it is inside the safe zone, but it's not necessarily a place that you want to commit to staying at. So EU is going to have to figure out, okay, is this where we regroup, or do we try to make some type of play off of this and push into some part of the map that CIS could control?
I don't think there's a lot of easy ways to get onto this this island. I mean, it's almost guaranteed to be finishing around essentially the CIS stronghold on this northwestern portion of the island.
There's a couple of fun motorcycle jump spots.
You can
see that.
Yeah, well, yeah. If that's all you have going for you, might as well do some sweet tricks.
Well, we got Moon making a cross back over. Looks like trying to meet up with the rest of his teammates as he was back over on the EU side of the map. So he's already managed to get himself pretty looted. Naturally, the Painan location where we see the EU players just off to the left side of your screen, they do have a little bit of control, but that's not even inside the safe zone right now.
I was just going to say, that was a flare gun I just heard for sure that time. I heard it. It's a flare gun. There's no red zone. 100%. I swear to God, this time we're going to have a BRDM. I know it. Yeah,
I just want to see one. We saw, like, it was such a pivotal moment in a couple of these rounds where you can use it to push in really aggressively and just unload a ton of people.
They might have shot it too early, too. I think if that was the case, yeah, there's planes in the air. So, yeah, there is the flare. So I'm not seeing an indicator on the mini-map that what we're going to get, but the plane is dropping something. Potentially 2 planes there, as we'll have a care package come down. And it's a BRDM, I'm almost certain.
Yes, it looks like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is going to be going to the EU side, actually, I believe.
Oh, well, this is the point where you need it. If you're going to make that cross over through the canal, because now you have an option for something to get over there. But really, CIS hasn't taken too aggressive of a bridge camp over on that western, right next to Hatin. I'm surprised that they're not, like, doing anything around that bridge yet.
Well, it's just a matter of getting looted up and getting situated. There's not a lot of rush right now, and it looks like EU is going to have the opportunity to get across nice and early. But they're coming across as one big group, and they could be encircled if they get caught on this beach.
I feel like this is a little bit of a misplay coming out from the CIS region. They're not defending the territory, and with this, everybody from EU is managing to just kind of push in. The only problem with it is where EU is making their cross at is going to make them surround.
Wait a second. I thought it was the EU flare gun, but it looks like Moon is going to get this BRDM.
Yeah, back down from the side of it. So, when do you, I don't. They even just like shot it and left it. It's almost like it was a bait.
Possible. I mean, maybe a bit of a distract. Okay, maybe it's two. Maybe they both got one.
There we go. That's probably because we saw the two planes going.
That's true. Maybe it was both kind of going off at the same time. So we might have BRDMs on both sides, which would be certainly interesting at this early stage of the game. There's a care package in the heart of the CIS area there, but EU is again funneling across in one area. It is safe, but there's a big cluster.
I want to see this with Etna's going to be following up right behind all of these people from EU that are swimming. If he manages to jump off the side of it and manage to run over somebody, that would make me so happy.
If you get run over in the water, you're instantly dead. Yeah.
So got to be super cautious as he makes that cross. I think is waiting for everybody else to go ahead of him. But you can see EU has managed to make landfall, pushed over into this. But the problem, again, they're all just funneled together, and there's not a lot of spots for this many players to play at.
It's a rough area of the map because there's such a large uphill push here, and it looks like they're going to get spotted. Haruzen is up there, and he's got, I think, one with him, and he can see all these EU players moving up the side of this hill. And he's be like, no, thank you, I'm good, I'm good.
That is just we talk about terrifying while you're driving your Scout and suddenly you see like 20 cars around. To walk over the hillside by yourself, look on the minimap, be like, oh, I have no support, and then just see 20 people running up a hillside. It's like, nope, just feed the information, slink back away.
It's like ants just headed back to the colony here as they are going to get a nice piece of center high ground, but it's going to be hard because they're going to have people coming from all sides.
Well, they can play along this like cliff face and give themselves at least one vantage point where they know that they're safe from, and get a little bit more control with it. But we also do have the group from EU that's coming up from the south, whereas most of the CIS has managed to.
They got bridge control.
Just back over to the south. Yeah, they got bridge control, but that's just not what EU is doing.
There's a pedestrian bridge there in the middle as well. They can get across. It looks like Spreezy's just scouting for that contingent to make sure that they can get across safely. So for the most part, both sides are going to be forming up at full strength.
So now it's just a matter of how is CIS going to make a play around this, as it looks like it's just going to be a firm contingent of both squads playing towards the center. You can see Constantine looking back over a little bit of the stragglers from EU coming back over in this direction. I'm pretty sure that he spotted them out, but he is by himself. He does have himself a nice little sightline that he could play, though, so he could do a little bit of damage to them. But I do like where EU is choosing to play this. The question just comes into play, how are we going to see circle shifts, and how are they going to adapt to this? Because CIS is approaching from two different areas. It's like 4 or 5 people up towards the north, whereas almost everybody else is back down towards the south.
Bit of a fire. I don't know what I want to call it. It's not quite a fight just yet, but they're just kind of poking and prodding at each other. CIS has kind of come up on the mountainside. They're on the lower portion, and all of EU is up on the rocks. So now it's going to be a matter of who can hit what shots, as they are going to have CIS coming in from behind as well. This could be an early disaster for EU if they can't defend this.
Well, it's just a couple of members from CIS back behind, whereas they're committing to trying to control the group from the other side of it.
This is a big problem.
But if Finn can manage to get into a good spot and get a couple of shots off and really dismantle them and create chaos, because that's the big factor. When you've got 32 people talking and something goes sideways, suddenly the comms explode, and it is so hard to relate what you need to do.
At this vision here, Finnick is just going to start laying out with the SKS and try and get some shots on the Mavic there, but not able to get anything down. Spreezy's going to step up. I believe that was actually Danu, and we'll get the first down looking for the flush. But CIS they're not nearly at full strength, but they've already got EU kind of scattered looking around all behind them.
I mean, it feels like they had the opportunity. Finn had the angle for it, but now it's just going to start coming apart since they've had the cards laid out on the table. So now EU is just capable of responding, and they have so many numbers that they can push back off this direction. The thing about it, though, do they lose control of South now near CIS?
Yeah, I was going to say the CIS need to do something on the South right now, because it's they've lost a couple of players, or at least one rather, I should say, straight out of the game. And where they're going to lose another is Mordello, the man we've seen so often, is going to step up and do some more damage. So for Mordello, he's been very active in these games, and they're actually going to force this reverse flank off of CIS without losing anybody.
And that is a rough life you have to live now. Just hide out right underneath of everything. New circle pops. Both groups are pretty much inside the safe zone. Nothing to really worry about. Naturally, where we're looking at with EU, they're towards the eastern side of it, so might have to rotate given the next circle, but no big rush right now. And so with this, CIS opting into moving into Camp Alpha to get control over that location.
That's a smart move because if the circle continues to shift around Camp Alpha, you have to come down the hill to get there, and it's a very wide open and very large hill. You can see He's essentially maybe going to hurl his corpse at Club Deluxe. Hope for the best there, but I heard another flare gun go off, so that's going to be another reinforcement coming in. This one probably inside the zone. Haven't seen the BRDMs come into play just yet, but with Camp Alpha essentially going to CIS, it's going to be a high-low battle, and if CIS is smart, considering they're down a couple of guys now, they're just going to have to wait for the circle to do the work for them and force them down the hill.
So patience pays off for CIS. If they had to make that push from the south up to the north where we see EU at, there's very contained, I guess, walkways that you have to go up. And it would have been a bloodbath for them. So there's your BDRM2 right there, making a little bit of a rotation. So they have themselves some toys to play with. But now it's just like you're talking about, EU. This is going to be a very difficult push back down this hillside.
It's hard to get off that hill, man. You have to come down very specific ways, like you said. And not to mention, it's going against hard cover. So they have a literal military base, essentially, to be able to use the windows, and there's a lot of different lines of sight. But they have to be patient, not lose anybody else. They are down 4.
It's very similar if you haven't played in this part of the map with a group like this. It's kind of trying to make that push back down off of Antenna Tower on Airnville. There's just some of these cliffs you just cannot walk down. So with everybody from CIS, depending on how these circles go, they might have a couple of ideas with them.
A couple of EU players on the northern side kind of sending a contingent out, maybe try and get around this now death ball of CIS hanging out in Camp Alpha. And with all these players still alive, it's a very easy situation where I can see if this northern contingent gets caught out, they could lose those 4 players and even the game very quickly.
It's just a matter of you got to hit the shots whenever you go for these flank positions. You've got to make sure that this is a lot of time being dedicated to a rotation and resources. Again, like you talked about, losing a couple of members here could be very detrimental for everybody from EU. But that being said, they still haven't lost a member yet.
Yeah, they got a little bit of security there as well. Haruzan just took down one with a headshot at a distance, and they've got a couple of buildings there just kind of make sure that no one can get around them, but they have to be very, very cautious, as it looks like Greg is going to have a couple of EU members approaching his position very quickly.
Sanders has been having to hang out this whole time in the back lines of EU, just patiently waiting to see if anybody gets aggressive back around him. So he could be a thorn in the side of EU, but really he's just by himself. Here's your flare gun coming in. Looks like some nice resources coming through. So at this point, it's still just kind of firing lines back and forth, with Anonymous kind of being the odd man out. That looks like their whole group that they had pushed over there has now been spotted out. Now everybody runs back over towards the care package as bullets collapse down around them. M249 though.
Yeah, it's Mad Dash to see who gets what. Looks like most of the gear is going to go to Drainus, as he gets the M249 as well as the level 3 gear. And Greg is actually going to do his duty and prevent that flank for the EU squad from doing anything. Now Saz going to step up. Oh, a little bit of a potato there. He's going to miss out on Blade Buyer. He's going to get away on the motorcycle. But with a couple of players in the downstate and the circle going to CIS, this now puts all of EU on the they have to go on the offensive now, I guess.
But look at the reposition back down towards the south. EU saw a vulnerable point. Going to try to use that to capitalize. They have spent about 8 members back down on the side of it. Up towards the north, naturally you can see this is where Anonymous has been downed. But I think that this is the vulnerable point for CIS. If EU can get a couple of their members down there, we talked about those cliff facings, EU does have a clean path to make it back around, back behind where we see Morrow, King of Pachinki, and the rest of these guys. So how are we going to see CIS defend this? Because this could be their opportunity.
They've kind of moved back out of the Camp Alpha spot, and now EU is going to have to go a little bit further south. This is going to give them opportunity to get off the hill on the backside, but they have to move really quickly. With only 10 seconds left before the circle starts to close, they're spread out once again. They have 4 or 5 people on the northern side that are kind of off on their own, being defended by only a couple of CIS players. But it is still the advantage in EU's favor. So, I mean, if they can make this fight go, they can potentially win this game. They've got the BRDM to work with at the very least.
And it has a lot of really interesting strategies that you can play off of it. EU getting a couple more downs and flushes as well, just continuing to keep that numbers advantage. So their hopes are still alive because this is such an important game for EU. They have got to win this if they ever want a chance to continue on. Meanwhile, CIS very, almost feels comfortable in their lead right now. They're not doing what we kind of saw them do earlier, where they were being a little bit more aggressive. Instead, they're just kind of doing what we saw EU do and play a little bit more retreated strategy.
Feels bad for the QBU guy there, trying to get the shots to go, but can't get it to go. The strategy here for CIS has been kind of patience, and this is now going to be a situation where things are kind of being forced to a head as all of EU is on the southern side, and there's a man on a scooter.
Sad. He managed to get away from everybody. Remember, he was in the back lines of EU, going to drive by Club of Deluxe, but shouldn't have anything happen to him. So finally, our man has met back up with his friends.
Returning to the fold with his intel.
All of the things. It's like, I saw so many rocks, guys. You should see the other side of the map. It's really interesting. So
look at this field they got to push through if they want to get anywhere close.
Oh, Kiss, you could find yourself in a little bit of trouble. Don't take any shots back over at this thing, man.
That thing's going to blow up so fast, they have no idea.
I mean, it's going to take some damage over with it. You can see it's starting to smoke now. No! A little bit too much confidence in the PDRM there.
Yeah. I knew that was coming.
Kiss does get taken down as well as the EU push is starting to come out. I see it was all a distraction tactic, Moses, right? They have the numbers, so EU can sacrifice a few, so that way these other guys...
They got to get through this open field, man. It's going to be a bloodbath there.
Yeah, well... Hope springs eternal. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping too. I mean, I would love to see a third game here, but for CIS, they've got a lot of advantages, and the circle is going to go in their favor again. And you can see just like game number 1, EU is starting to spread thin.
But here's my thing: CIS is kind of separated out. EU is kind of making an attack line.
Yeah.
So if EU can capitalize and really just spring and attack the southern CIS region, then they could actually get a foothold inside of this circle. But again, they're being just a little bit too passive with it. And Zoom's going to get taken down there. Got Club of Bubba that's, Club of Deluxe that's back behind this, getting a little bit more control. But really, it's just a matter of when does EU try to make an opportunity off of this. Finally finding that wall off along the eastern part of the circle. They've got a couple of members inside the safe zone.
See that now CIS has kind of got this core that they're defending with, and players are going on the rocks, and there's a couple of players out to defend. Play With Me Now is not going to win the 1v1 against Clubba, and he's going to need some support, but you know, CIS is still losing. The advantage is still in EU's favor.
Clubba's been back behind enemy lines for a long time, and he's been able to do a little bit of damage here. Finally going to get taken out by Dubai. So now we've got EU making their push back along near the side where Camp Alpha is at. Naturally not going to push all the way in, but it's kind of a two-pronged assault coming out from EU, pushing along the eastern side, meanwhile keeping one group right along the west, pushing along that coastline. Can they get anything out of it, though, as they do have the capability of catching a crossfire, but that group that's in the crossfire's got buildings to work.
This is going to be interesting. I mean, there is a path for you to win this game. They've got the man advantage with 5, but they do have a bit of an interesting situation where they have some on the backside of the coast, and they have most of their forces on the east side, on the hillside. So we'll just kind of see now what the circle does again, I think, because there's hard cover versus no cover right now.
It feels like it hinges so much for EU on this western group. If they can manage to get something out of this, well, they have this pincer position that they can capitalize off of, but every single time they go for any type of push, any angle back down towards that other group that's in between the other EU group, it's these guys, Circle 5 and everybody, and SAS that's up towards the top of these hills, that's just raining down damage.
VZ is trying to watch right now, and now the kill feed's starting to light up. For the most part, it's kind of an even trade as EU is making their play towards the northern compound of CIS, as you can see on the top of your screen there, with a couple of players still on the coastline trying to deal with each other. It seems that CIS has been reacting well, and now this is where EU has in precarious position. They're all running right towards that hard cover.
Yeah. It's right here at Camp Alpha. This is where it's going to go down, right along this outer wall. You can see everybody from EU is starting to make their push. They're going to have to cross over that road, and it looks like CIS is very firmly aware of it, trying to set up a defensive line. EU is kind of stopped in their tracks. They're waiting for everybody else to kind of group up. They want more numbers, but that's just allowing grenades to start raining down on top of them. Sooner or later, they have to capitalize off of this. They have to make the push before CIS manages to regroup.
Yeah, and CIS's southern compound isn't making any moves just yet. They're being watched by a few EU players, but EU has kind of used this momentum and then kind of come to a halt. They got a couple of downs, and they're continuing to pile up as they go for reses, then another player gets downed, and that's how these games come apart so quickly. CIS, however, is still down on the scoreboard.
I have to give a big shout out to Double right now, who's inside of Camp Alpha. He has been distracting so many CIS members. He's got this nice sight line back over towards them, not allowing them to reposition too much. But again, CIS still firmly defending this spot as now crates are starting to land down. What's EU going to be able to do? That Western group, only, what, 4 members now?
VZ trying to displace the grenades, gets forced off by some gunfire. That's going to bounce. Oh, that was bounced in. That could have been crazy. But this next circle is kind of centered up, so I think this fight is going to continue. And I've got to say, EU kind of feels like they have the advantage, but every time I see the kill feed, it's EU players getting down.
It just feels like they can't find the right angles and that safe approach that they want so desperately. They're trying to play along this cliff, but the problem with it is the cliff is actually cutting out a lot of terrain that they can work with. So they're kind of forced to play like in these jump spots. You can see Mobsy having to just kind of step up along those angles. So they're kind of forced into their own little canal choke points that they're having to work around. And you just can't figure out which way to go. They wanted to go north, but now they're looking back down towards the south, and they just can't make the call at this point.
Kind of a lull as, again, it's all EU players getting down, this time flushed. So I guess we're going to wait for this circle to complete, but EU has kind of come to a halt. There's a couple of crates out in the field, but it looks like they got punished trying to get them.
It feels like these 3 members from EU off on this western front, they don't have a real approach angle, so they're just kind of playing full on defense now, just laying down, crawling through the fields. The guys that are over towards the east for EU don't have clear sight lines to really protect too much. But CIS just feels like they're comfortable. They're in no rush. They're still just waiting for EU to make a mistake so they can capitalize off of it. But the problem is, what happens if EU never makes that big mistake and the circles just continue to favor EU?
Things again, just kind of waiting for the circle to press. It looks like EU does have circle advantage, and this is where the game can be won or lost. If the circle goes west in the favor of CIS, that'll be a big problem for EU. But of course, with how much real estate they have, there's a really good chance that EU gets the favor of this next circle.
Now it's just a matter of how they're trying to capitalize off the play. You can see Muno being a little bit more aggressive, crawling up and forward, but that's allowing that 3-man squad from EU to rain a little bit of damage back behind him as VZ does take him down. So that's still, now everybody from CS knows that's not a place that they can play, so they're still forced to stay contained inside of these buildings right along the edge of the circle.
Circle getting ready to change here in a couple of seconds. Still a big advantage in the favor of EU right now, as we're just kind of waiting to see how the circle changes. And this is going to dictate the next movement here for EU, who are continuing to basically keep them contained, CIS that is, in their buildings.
Where are we going, Moses?
South.
Oh, back down towards the south. So that northern group from CIS in a lot of trouble. The EU guys can just rotate along that hillside.
Yep.
That 3-man squad from EU also in a little bit of trouble, but in the perfect spot to catch everybody from CIS as they leave from those northern buildings.
Depends on what happens with this little contingent between the two teams as well on the western side.
Well, I say that, and all of a sudden all the EU guys that were in that great spot now getting caught out.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're in an interesting, there's only 3 or 4 of them there, though, on the western side, so, and there's another one down, so I think this is now going to be the time to move, and yes, indeed, they are going to start coming out of the compound, and EU is going to try and press the action to kind of force them out and get some very critical kills. Bonkai getting one down, Mobsy looking for those shots with the M24.
See, EU is still playing the backside of that hill, so they can't. It's really dangerous for them to step up and look back down the hillside. Really, it's just these guys. That grenade is going to be big, and VZ's got near on no life. You can see just having your force run off of utility right now. But here comes a little bit of the push from EU back over towards the north. A couple of downs have come out in their favor. They've got one person down and flush, but continuing to make the push, not relenting on the backside of CIS. And you can see just lining up right along the edge of this circle. They've got the utility to work with, but does get spotted out. Nexus goes down in that.
This
now
is getting closer, Matt. still a 5-man advantage. They haven't really decided who's going to win. And with all these downs happening on both sides, it's getting closer and closer. This might come down to the wire because EU is taking so long to try and deal with these remnants in this building. They now have the circle at their backs, and the rest of CIS is watching this happen on the southern side.
And this is a fight not inside the safe zone, so every single one of these downs that's happening for EU is more problematic. That's just another man that they have to leave behind. That's dropping us down to 17 people up for EU right now, but 11 for CIS, as EU is still having to struggle, taking those shots right across the top of this hillside, looking back down into no man's land that CIS is having to contend with.
Blue's here now, or at least it's approaching. The CIS has got most of their players still in the circle, but there's only 9 of them left. Deepi will go down, and it kind of feels like EU might take this game.
So we got Botulin that is still alive, playing right along the side of this, but really it's just the southern team for CIS that didn't have to move. They've got a little bit of an angle that they can play along, but Botulin's all by himself, right along. He's hanging out right next to that crate, throwing up a grenade, maybe trying to get something out of it, but it is now 15-6. And can we see a potential comeback? Can EU stay alive? They need this victory so desperately.
Now it's going to be hard cover for the remaining 6. And they've got the firepower. Drainage is there. I know he's got level 3 gear, but I think they've been collecting gear. Has EU on the way through their northern rotations, and it's going to be now deciding against circle. If it comes south, they're praying for it. We'll see what happens for CIS here.
Faultlessly is kind of the point man, trying to get a little bit more information for CIS based off of their positioning.
That's bad.
And yeah, there's really, it's just Faultlessly that's inside the circle, and so now CIS is going to have their work cut out for them. Luckily, Faultlessly does get a down off the side flank there, so it's going to buy him a little bit more space. CIS does have one building that they can continue to try to play around, but at that point, if you just opt into going that building, the game is over for you.
They did pick up a couple of players there, but there's still a tremendous advantage in EU's favor.
They have to hit the shots of their life. CIS has to look back up on this hillside. Meanwhile, a lot of the EU players still do need to make it inside the safe zone. There's still about 6 or so that haven't managed to make it back over there, but Drainus gets spotted out and down and flushed to boot. So that's just going to be another member going down. Every single time a CIS member goes down, it's just spelling more and more victory back over for EU. Spirit almost makes it back over towards cover, but I think he should be able to be rested where he's at.
The QBU and the M4 sniping has been such an interesting portion of this game, but it looks like the EU is going to take this to a game number 3.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we can see that Bankai has got himself a nice position. Rez is going to come back out over towards Kivo. Botulin's going to be the last man trying to make the cross back over towards the safe zone, but that's going to drop us down to 3 people alive. Spray's going to come back over towards Test, get a little bit of damage off of it. But really, it's just Test, and look at the amount of people from EU just running down in here. A Molotov of all things that take them down. Victory goes back over towards EU. 13 people alive, and there we go, Andy Pyro alive and active.
Using what energy he's got left in the tank to let out a victory cry there, does Andy. As EU takes the game, and they've got to be feeling real good. This is the first victory they've been able to win against CIS in all their meetings so far. And that game was, again, a very interesting set of strategies, and that was really dictated by the circles in the mid and late game.
And we've finally not seen a blowout. So far, it has just been constant 3-0s to 2-0s. EU looks like they did manage to learn some things from those Latin American fights and managed to capitalize off of it. I gotta say, really, I just love watching the way that these guys are playing this. It's like that chess match that you were talking about. It's so cerebral.
I think that allowing EU to come across from the boot camp area essentially unopposed, come up to this hillside. They had a bit of a contain on them, but they never really wanted to get aggressive with it. And I think that might have been what led to their demise. And shout out to the BRDM, who lasted all 30 seconds as they trying to, I don't know what they were trying to do. They're trying to get from point A to point B.
The BDRM is very tanky when you're going against one squad. It's just the problem whenever there's like, I don't know,
30 people
over there looking over at it.
Well, that's an interesting game number 2. There was still a chance here, even in the phase number 6 here, it was still kind of close. But that circle shifting in the favor of EU really made it so it was difficult for CIS and their 2-2 split essentially to make anything happen. And again, it was just a strategic game that unfolded, I think, in a very methodical way.
Well, that goes back to kind of the thing that we see happen a lot inside of PUBG. Whenever you get put on that reactionary phase where you're just trying to figure out how to capitalize off of a mistake from an enemy, really you're just letting the enemy dictate how to play, and that's what kept allowing EU to get into these very aggressive positions and hold them where I thought CIS had a couple of opportunities to like counter push, and they just never did.
Well, we have only definitely this time one more game to go, where CIS and the EU vie to see who are going to move on to face against North America in the next round. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back for game number 3.
É difícil quem faz, é mais fácil falar do que correr atrás. Se é capaz, mostra pra si mesmo primeiro, depois conquista o mundo, mais nobre guerreiro. Você faz, esse é o conceito de quem assume a responsa e bate no peito, não basta ter fé, se não se movimenta, nem o teto se mantém sem o pilar que o sustenta. Tenta, até conseguir, se a fé não remove a montanha, ela te ajuda a subir, progredir, a cada passo dado, evoluir, resistir o peso do fardo, o obrigado atrai tanta coisa pra agradecer, a vida dá um pensamento pra vencer, enquanto só reclama, só chama mais problema, deixa o mal fluido solto e o bom cheio de algema.
back to the GLL Grand Slam Showdown, where it is now all on the line. One more game remains between EU and CIS to determine who will face NA in the semifinal, I should say. And we just had two very interesting games, one going to EU and one going to CIS. And now I imagine that this is going to be an even sweatier game than the last two.
Oh my God, you can just feel the tension mount with every single one of these rounds. Neither one of these regions wants to lose to each other. Well, naturally, both of them want to go back against North America because CIS got a little bit of vengeance that they want to get back, and then there's always the regional rivalry between North America and EU. But now, Game 3, tied up, everything's on the line. And yes, this is probably going to be the sweatiest game of PUBG you have seen in a while.
And the good news is we're going to see a new map for the first time in a little while. We're going to be playing it on Vikendi.
Hell yes. I've been waiting for Vikendi on this.
I
wanted to see it so bad.
I don't know if we've seen one in the past yet because I didn't see all the games, but as far as the strategy is concerned, Vikendi plays differently than all the other maps. There's so much more natural cover. Terrain is a big factor. Visibility is a factor. So depending on how... I don't know how the early game's going to go because there's so many different areas, so many different compounds you can hold. Sanhok and Erangel, you kind of have to choose where your compounds are. And Vikendi is rife with compounds. They're everywhere.
32 people. How are you going to drop and how are you going to play that out? It's very interesting there. As you can see, they're getting everything set up for whenever we move into. Keep in mind, we're just in the showdown right now. We still have the full-on Grand Slam that's going to be happening right after that, so make sure you guys stay tuned in for all the pro matches to follow this.
Yes, indeed. And that is going to be the marquee event as we move towards the actual Grand Slam event itself, which will be starting after Showdown, as Matt just said. I'm really interested to see how the mentality shifts between the previous maps on Sanhok and Erangel and Vikendi, because I think this is the first time, at least these two squads, that they've played Vikendi against each other at all.
I'm just curious on what happened to the aggression that we've seen from CIS. They're very, very patient with their aggression. They kind of sit and they wait, and then they finally go, that's our opportunity, and then they take it. It didn't feel like they really did that the last game. I mean, they kind of handed over an easy pass to EU to get over to the island, kind of pleasantly let them sit there and take some pot shots back and forth. Never really saw them capitalize and take an opportunity inside of this. So curious if we'll see a little bit more aggressive of a CIS region as a whole coming into this next round.
Absolutely, and I think that the mid game will be interesting as well because the way you transition on Vikendi in the mid game is much different because of the natural terrain and that kind of thing. Not to mention the snow and how the vehicles handle in that terrain as well. Plus just the amount of compounds. CIS likes to kind of spread out and take control, so does EU, and there's going to be compound to compound fighting, and that's just the way Vikendi plays out.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of run and gun as well, and that's going to be interesting to see how we see this favor out, as there's so many different parts of the map that are just like trees. So depending on how we see this, naturally you're also going to be able to, like, I can only imagine somebody's going to be walking along and suddenly just be like, oh, look at all of the tire treads. I do not want to go this direction at all anymore.
The footprint tracking with 32 people will be interesting.
Just watching a caravan go through.
There's a herd of caribou headed this way. Or
it's like, we don't go that way, guys. We're going to go this way instead.
Well, I don't think there'll be too much tracking necessary because it's been a high-powered affair between these two teams, especially through the end of the games where it's just been one fight after the other constantly. So I'm interested to know if EU is going to stick to the centering strategy or if they're going to try and spread more, because the containment on the CIS last game was quite good. But we're headed right into the last game. No messing around, no chit-chat required. The plane is in the air, and it is very, very far to the southwest.
So now, how do you capitalize off of this? Where do you send all of your players? Do you separate out to different complexes? Does everybody group drop like they've been doing beforehand? Naturally, Volnova can definitely support, I would say, probably all 32 players, especially whenever we're dealing with like the super settings as we move forward with this. So now it looks like we're seeing a big dropout off the get-go for one of the regions, and the other one looks like they might be opting to playing a little bit more towards the north.
Well, the looting here is interesting as well. I want to know if they're going to try and go to like Goroka or if they're going to split between Villa, Kresnik, and Podvosto. And it looks like CIS is going to be coming out basically in line right after EU, and they're going to be taking Goroka as well as Krishna as well, and a couple of the other northern towns as well. So interesting start.
Looks like EU is definitely still committing to their get control over center, try to control that as best as you can, and just play off of that hoping for circle favor. It paid off for them finally in that last game. Now it's just a matter of where do we see circles line up? Does this match what the strategies are going to go through? It looks like nobody's going to be making their way up near Cosmodrome or any of those other locations unless we see the circle go that direction. And oh, CIS, you might have yourselves a little bit of trouble, as this looks like this is definitely going to favor EU. Does EU capitalize now, though, is the question, and where do they set up defensively?
Well, similar to other maps, there's a couple of specific choke points that are along that river. So you have the castle choke point as well as the one just outside of Pot Vosto. So there should be checkpoint control, but you can go all the way north and come south as well. There's some ways around that. There shouldn't be any tremendous issues for CIS in rotation.
Shout out to those guys for picking the Kindy as well, so we can see the great GLL banners all over the place.
Yep.
Always nice to be able to catch those as we can, but naturally, at this point, CIS, what do? I'm guessing far north rotation. You have to assume off a plane path, that's going to be the weaker point, so that way you make a big rotation over there. Does EU counter that, or do they just continue to play towards center, as they do have one member that's already right in the middle of the circle?
I imagine the first couple of minutes are just going to be slow and steady, as we've seen in the previous matches. Everyone's going to get looted up in their respective areas, and then they're going to move on.
This is like a crash course on how competitive PUBG plays out on a very massive scale right now. So if you're tuning in PUBG competitively for your first time, you get an idea on how big of a factor rotations are, especially whenever having to deal with 32 people all rotating together. But now let's get a look over here, as again, everybody's just casually looting. Not a lot of real danger to be had, as I don't think that we have anybody even within a couple of 100 meters at this point. It's just a very casual, relaxed looting phase. But one thing I did want to note is we do have that area around Castle that's kind of the frozen river, and then the actual river just to the south of it. That can be a play factor that we're going to have to see how people try to navigate that if it becomes a issue in the later parts of the game.
I don't think we're going to see too much action around Castle. I can imagine most of the CISs want to go north, where they can walk across the river without too much issue, because if you go south, you're having to use bridges and that kind of thing, which is not what they're going to want to do.
Well, naturally, that's what I was saying earlier, that they were going to rotate, but if we keep seeing circles go back down towards center, we might see that be a factor and have to play around that. So it's just a matter of being aware of the terrain points and what could be detriments, because that's even worse than any type of Gatka field you could ever come across. That's just wide out and in the open, and there's just a no man's land that you'd have to stand in.
Well, even crossing the river is difficult as well. It just the frozen aspect. You're wide on the other. There's a little bit of cover here and there, but what I want to know is how EU is going to try and respond to where they think CIS landed. So if they have a good idea as to where that is, or Kresnik, I think, is kind of the focal point. You can take that over on the CIS side or the EU side and just kind of wait. So I imagine that's what we'll be seeing our first fights.
Well, EU has to know, with the plane path being so down to the south, they know that nobody's over in their area. So everybody has to be back over towards the west, up towards the north. So the question is EU going to take an aggressive stance? Because it doesn't look like they are. They're going to play around Mount Kresnik, but it seems like they're going to let like Peshkova and all that other stuff just still be out in the open. And CIS, this is going to be how they rotate. We already know. They're going to see that opportunity.
Kind of waiting now as the loot phase continues. Just chilling. We have no circle pressure just yet. It's going to be 4 minutes before this first circle completely closes. So there is no rush on the CIS squad to move anywhere just yet. And we haven't, normally what we see in these matches is kind of how they form up and where they intend to go. We haven't really seen that on either side, as everyone's just content to put nose to the ground and loot.
That's great. Well, that's definitely going to be looted. That Mark 14 is going to be a factor about, 500 meters off of the coastline. Nobody's going to be going around.
That happens a lot in this patch.
It really does. It does feel like they're always just out in the water.
Just dumps it out in the water on the edge of the zone.
Now, I feel bad on this map whenever I see people always running around without shoes on. That would have to suck. That's going to be really cold.
You live in Texas. What do you know?
I don't know about snow.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair, I lived in Germany for a while, too.
Okay.
So there was snow there.
Yeah, how old were you?
All the way up until whenever I was about 8.
Whenever you were about 8?
Yeah.
So what, 1971?
Yeah, 80s. It was the 80s, all
right. Yeah, no, walking around in snow is, yeah, I've done it. I've done it a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes you're like, hell, I'll just deal with it. As long as you don't travel long distances, you'll be all right. But it's never a fun feeling being out without your shoes on in the snow.
It's PUBG. You're always going to travel long distances having to walk through the snow.
Man, the whole footsteps discussion about shoes or no shoes, it's about style, okay? There's no style to walking around like a barefooted hobo, okay? You got to, put some shoes on. Don't worry about the footstep sounds. You're not that good anyway.
Get something, run a little bit of fashion, get yourself some nice shoes to wear. Maybe pick yourself up a GLL shirt?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like the distressed jeans. There's not a lot of good pants in PUBG.
This is true.
You know, pants are always lacking.
Meanwhile, you can see everybody already huddled up inside of their vehicles for EU, and yes, they're opting towards the centering strategy. Moses, I'm so surprised.
The centering strategy, yes, coming away from Kresnik, they're going to give up some ground and just kind of condense, but I don't think this is going to be necessarily as easy for them to maintain the center position, considering the terrain of Vikendi. You can see as they drive around, a lot of up and downs, a lot of hills, a lot of ways to flank around. And CIS has really been the strongest when they're just taking those one-to-one gunfights. The CIS region has always been very, very mechanically skilled, similar to what we see in places like Korea and that kind of thing. So, again, we're waiting for this first circle to close.
I'm just enjoying watching people like that are used to driving on Erangel and Miramar have to deal with snow. All these pro players and streamers, how well they can handle dealing with the ice as they shift back and forth. Nice driving their test, see, avoiding everything. Saw somebody spinning off in the distance a second ago.
They're just doing their stage walkthroughs here, Matt, as we get ready for the main event. And I got to say, if you've seen the stages in competitive PUBG, this one is probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. So if you're here for the showdown, you absolutely have to stick around for the main event here in just a couple of hours, as we have the first games underway and the show open as well. But for now, all our attention is on who is going to be advancing to the semifinal to face off against North America.
Hey, red zones, I forgot that they exist. But nobody's even inside of this one, so nothing to really worry about. See rotations, so no big surprise there. Everybody's coming around from the north for CIS. They're going to have a pretty open opportunity because EU didn't opt into setting up any traps or trying to go for any kills. Really, everybody is just playing for the late game, which means it's all about strategy at this point. Naturally, EU is opting playing around that cement factory in the hills just to the north of it. Meanwhile, we can see CIS making the round about Cosmodrome. And I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe push back down next to Peshkova, but that'll probably be about as far in as they go.
Be kind of a gentle southern rotate here. I think it's just going to be kind of like a rolling pin. They just kind of stick to the edge of the zone, move south until they meet resistance, and then maybe form up around there. But honestly, I have no idea how this is going to play out. I've never seen 32 versus 32 on Vikendi, and just the way the way the base game plays on this map is just kind of confusing. I mean, the visibility is kind of difficult. It's a beautiful map. It's absolutely gorgeous, but there's trees, rocks, hay bales.
Just look at that, trees everywhere.
Just little things here and there, just little parts of the map, and it looks like the circle is going to go in favor of EU, and this is a massive advantage already. And I wonder if CIS wants to head to the coastline and kind of just avoid that direct southern approach, which is looks like they're going to do just that.
I mean, this is just a giant middle finger to CIS region from RNGesus here.
Yeah.
So now they're just going to have to play right along that coastline. Hope that it's vulnerable. EU still playing very passive, not much to worry about at this point, as the contingent of vehicles making their push through. I like how there's like 6 guys that do not have any vehicles that are just on foot from CIS, just watching everybody drive through. Every once in a while, somebody will stop and pick somebody else up that's like a good person, but then you'll have somebody else that'll just drive by and honk the horn like, ha ha, sucks to be you.
Well, they're going as one. There's no doubt about that. They are going to stay together. That is maybe a bit of an issue in the last game, where CIS in the first couple of rotations were kind of spread apart. But EU is doing the exact same thing. They are packed close together in the center.
EU looks like they seem to be aware of where the approach is, maybe spotted out 1 or 2 of them based off of those hills.
Maybe they can hear the 75 vehicles driving.
I mean,
as well.
that's a pretty loud group of vehicles just traveling through the map.
Those bees.
At least you don't have to hear the the snowmobile scraping against the cement. Oh my God!
It's like the old buggy sound.
Nightmares, Moses, nightmares.
And here comes the first shots of the game, as it's going to be Anonymous and X-Chris taking some shots at the arriving CIS squad. But they're going to get in relatively unopposed, and they are going to split into 2-2, at least a small one, across the road leading south.
So CIS managed to find themselves a little bit of a spot, some shots coming through. Really, I'm surprised that Offspring and the rest of his crew isn't taking shots back up yet to provide some type of cover for the passing groups that are moving back behind them. Really, they're just kind of casually chilling here and just watching the destruction go on around them.
No downs for either side, still 32 on both. Minute 11, I think this is probably going to be that minute 15 crunch, as we still have another minute and a half before the next circle closes. And EU is just nice and dense, nothing really happening, just getting a couple of shots back and forth And the first down of the match is going to go to Nexus as he takes out Offstring.
So now a little bit of weakness showing over for CIS in that control point that they had. That's going to be a very influential point for CIS in my opinion, because they still have like what? Probably about 15 people, maybe 12, somewhere around that range, that are going to be coming back along that same path. So CIS is going to need to try to defend them the best they can, as it looks like EU is firmly aware of where everybody from CIS is trying to rotate through. But Offstring doesn't even look like he's going to get rezzed, as I don't think that there's somebody that's next to him, but probably about what? Maybe a building away? Nobody's opting into making the push over to try to help them out yet.
Well, every man is important in this particular match, as we saw in the last game how things stayed very close until they just weren't anymore. It kind of breaks open at some point. But CIS is not slow, but they're methodical in their approach south, but they are all inside the zone. Most of their forces being on the northern side.
iZoom did manage to finally find a vehicle, so him and Kivo are going to be able to make their way over towards the safe zone. Going to be the stragglers back there for CIS. Also had a red zone drop onto him, just to be doubly rude. So whenever you're stuck out there on foot running in the blue zone, now you have a red zone to stack on top of it, but they managed to get away from it. King of Pachinki kind of pushing out away from the rest of EU, but New Circle does pop, kind of stays along EU's line. CIS is going to have to condense down a little bit more, but I don't know how much real territory CIS has to condense down into.
It's very bold, just kind of chilling. He's barefoot too.
Barefoot and no pants. I mean, God.
He's the popper king of Pachinki. He's very poor.
And super stylish to boot, because I think I saw him with a VSS in his hands. I mean, this man has some goals in life.
Okay, this is interesting now. It looks like CIS is going to get more of the hard cover advantage on their side of the street. EU is using the natural cover, but they're now they've got this big mountain to contend with. They can't really go too far up the thing. I guess they can if they want to for vision, but CIS is going to get a nice stronghold and a nice little contain on them, I think. It's going to be high-low again, and this is a very similar situation we saw in Sanhok.
Yep, I mean, it's just going to kind of play out. Now it's going to be about the fact and how can these guys that have the high ground, can they capitalize off of it? King of Pachinki's got his VSS and the angle for it, so he can just randomly hit little dots of damage into the backside.
Almost 400 rounds in order to harass.
Look, Moses, when you commit to the VSS, you commit to the VSS.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I can see Spreezy over here. Looks like he's just trying to find a good sight line for him to make some use out of the nice toys that he has in his hands. And a little bit of skirmish going back and forth, a couple of downs, but should be some resibles back and forth. I don't think that we're going to see too many flushes come into play quite yet.
I think the circle is closing again here, so it's going to be, this is interesting because this is starting to heat up relatively quickly, and you can kind of see EU can't go too high up this hill, or they get into line of sight of the CIS team. So in this low ground position, I think that EU doesn't have too much flexibility of movement.
That's kind of the thing with the wall that's back behind them. It's great for vision for everybody that's on it, but then if you have to rotate around it, it's just this giant dead zone that you cannot move through. And CIS looks like they're starting to try to capitalize off of the fact that really everybody can't move too easily from EU.
A lot of helmets getting popped right now as the sniper battle has been the focal point of this early fighting.
And I want to say it feels like that's not necessarily what EU wants. I don't know if they want these sniper battles, because they haven't really turned out. No. They've always been going CIS's favor.
Yeah, CIS has definitely had the advantage in like I said earlier, the one-to-one gunfights. And now CIS is starting to be a little bit more aggressive in their forward positioning. And that's forcing EU either up the hill. Going out of this hill was not the play, I don't think. But it's such a massive feature of this current zone that they really don't have any choice.
King of Pachinki has managed to piss off somebody enough to start looking around for him. So Kiss is over here trying to figure out where these silent little BBs are that are hitting him from the side. A couple other players also making a push over here. Now keep in mind, this could also be a CIS reposition, just trying to make their way back around off of this. But King of Pachinki is presently king of the bush. And outstanding. Got to be careful when you take that look around there. Got the BBs going in the back of Kiss, trying to figure out what's going on.
In classic VSS style, he's shooting a lot, but he's not really doing anything.
At this point, it's a distraction tactic, Moses. See, now, look at all the resources CIS is having to commit to try to figure out what's going on over here, when really it's just a mess of nothing.
This is Wacky Jackie's fault. He's the patron saint of the pleb, and now all these plebs are running around with the VSS.
The VSS is fun, man. I like it.
Case in point, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm bad at this game. I can talk about this game, but my aim is trash. All right, so.
Oh, this is interesting. So look at all that open field on the EU side of the zone.
Yeah, now here's the question that's going to happen with it. Is CIS going to be able to move fast enough? Can they reposition to maybe get those buildings up toward the north and really deny out EU? Well, they've had circle favor so far. EU has kind of been a little bit of trouble.
Not a lot of hard cover, as you just said, and they're all kind of focused on that compound just at the base of the hill, and I don't think they're going to be able to move too far. And the match is relatively even at this stage. Only one player has been forced out on the CIS side, but CIS doesn't have to move too much. This is kind of their favorable zone.
What was very interesting about EU's commitment to that hillside is while they had great vision and they can see rotations, I mean, it was still probably about 500-600 meters away from any shot, so it was really actually hard to get much damage out from those positions either. You managed to gather a lot of information, but now you don't have a chance to capitalize off of it. And oh, King of Pachinki walks up and manages to get the down flush with a kiss. See, look, VSS can't do things.
I'm receiving word of an interesting bit of information here. Do you know the King of Pachinki is Andy?
I did not know that.
I told you I was a pleb.
I was wondering where Andy was this whole time. I was like, I haven't seen him yet.
We don't know these things. We don't have the damn roster, okay?
How dare us know every single person?
I don't know everyone's alt.
God, we're just the absolute worst. How dare us spend all of our time studying the pros, which is where we usually get paid to do.
You should be the king of vodka.
Well, look at this. Andy, you've had your moment now. See, it looks like EU's managing to find a couple of little holes to carve out, but not necessarily having the most fun time right now as CIS is just starting to get more and more control over their locations. Well, it looks like everybody from EU did manage to make it up towards those northern buildings, so that's going to buy a little bit more space for them. It's just really those same defensive lines. It's not the clean one that we saw from round one where it was that World War II style, or World War I style. Now it's all just kind of scattered. Try to find whatever foothold you can and survive.
You know what? There's no advantage either side just yet, but this is EU is nice and spread out. I don't know what the next circle does. We got 50 seconds to find out, but it's a bit of a slow going here in the mid game. We're almost at 20 minutes.
Let's go ahead and just drop a crate over here right next to a cluster of CIS players as well. And CIS, no, this is not the point whenever you want to run over yourselves or get stuck back down in these little ditches.
Nice driving, dude. No tires, nice parking. I've been to Kiev. That's exactly how they park.
Well, faultlessly, apparently you are not faultless at your driving there, buddy. But, I mean, there's really no EU players around here except for King of Pachinki, capitalize off of.
And he's prone in a bush with a VSS.
Taking a lot of blue damage right now.
He's just chilling. He's proning, dude.
I mean, whenever you commit to the VSS life, this
proning
is what you
and
do.
owning, yeah.
Yeah. You just prone and crawl everywhere.
It looks like he's going to die to the zone if he's not careful.
That would be...
It's about to change.
That would be
again.
the best way.
More damage.
That is the most anti-pyro of anti-pyro ways to die, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, of string, we saw him get down a little bit earlier. We got two members from EU looking back over towards him. Forced him to play back around a rock. Oh, he gets spotted out, and he's going to get taken down. And this is kind of the vulnerable point we're talking with. Whenever you have just these solos kind of hiding out, but with the circle set up, look at the push from CIS.
Yeah, CIS is now condensing around that center compound, and that is the best compound in the zone to have right now, as Europe has decided to just, I guess, put all their forces on one side of the zone on the northern side.
Well, they've got a little bit of a hill that's playing right in the center towards the map. That's where we see like Mordello and Nexus and all those guys kind of hanging out at. And then meanwhile, we keep seeing CIS run over CIS people. You got to be careful with that. So now we got Club of Deluxe back over here. You can see how the defensive lines are starting to lay out. Whenever you're the front man on these, you got to be very, very cautious because it is just a ton of eyes that moment you take the shot that are going to spin back your direction.
It's kind of waiting now. I mean, we're still at, relatively even. CIS is at a disadvantage once again, though. And this is where things could potentially get rough for them if the circle goes north. EU is going to have a big, big advantage as they all have to come out of their compounds. But EU is also starting to get a bit of a contain on the northern side as well.
It also doesn't feel like there's too many vehicles for CIS to make. Like, if they have to just do a crazy push for whatever reason, try to, like, make some type of weird rotation through the blue, I don't think that they have the tools to do it. And, oh, King of Pachinki, man. That's, look, you can see the hope in his eyes. Oh, it's a vehicle, but we know on the other side of that, there's already a pop tire. I just want to see the sadness of Andy Pyro.
We can't get it out of the ditch anyway.
Oh, we can see Molotov's coming out, buying a little bit more space and control, but mine's going to get taken down there.
Here comes the CIS
push. Yep, it's going to be right back over there. King of Pachinki going to find himself a couple of friends here in just a second. And look at all the Molotovs being used right now.
Rush B, don't stop.
Club of Deluxe, now what you got? That's a line of people coming your direction. Looks Looks like Greg's going to be aware of where he's at. Spray's going to come through from Clever Deluxe, but that's going to give him away. Spins back around. Oh, let's get some damage off onto it, and is now on the hunt, but there are a ton of people back on the other side of that rock.
Good help, good help.
I just love how tilted your face gets every single time we cut back over.
No, I'm not tilted at all. You know what? I'm 100% on board with whatever the hell this is.
Missing a lot, apparently. Running back into the blue. What are you going to do? Buy a little bit more space. The one man on CIS's back line. But he does it.
He's doing his damn best, which is, considering the state of Andy, is probably the fact that he's conscious right now.
I mean, he's managed to do some work with this. Mumino's also a little bit of a bad
Sweden had to declare a state of emergency as they've actually run out of vodka after Andy's party last night.
Oh my God. All right, so here we go. It's fairly even here. We got most of the CIS players there in play. A couple of EU guys are going to have to fall back behind that, but EU really has a no man's land to work with.
Oh, baby. That is rough for EU right there.
All hopes and dreams now rest on the King of
Shout out to Andy for being alive, to be honest.
I thought he died a long time ago. Look at this. They're having to commit 2 people to try to figure out where this terrible human being is that's just messing with him in the back. Running the VSS back behind them here. Right on the edge. DPI wants to find this so bad.
I think he's out of meds.
Oh, there it is. The dream, alas, is gone, and Andy Pyro is out. So now no thorn in their side. CIS has a lot of control over the circle.
This is going to be rough for EU. I mean, there's really nothing. I don't see any compounds on their side. I don't know what the natural cover looks like, but they're just having to crash on foot.
I mean, yeah, you just have to run across. So many vehicles have probably lost all of their tires. But look at this. Blade is managing to buy a little bit of space here. A lot of smoke's being thrown down to try to get these reses back up. One solid grenade could do a massive amount of damage.
Baby, huge.
And look at this. Blade just showing up big as he's just continuing to push through this smoke. This could be the opportunity for EU if they can manage to survive through this. This is the vulnerability point that we were looking for.
Throw a molly. You've only got one left. You might as well.
I mean, so many mollies are coming out, but all these smokes that CIS threw down earlier actually turning out to be a disadvantaged position from him as Blade is just sweeping along this outer flank. Gonna show up right back behind it, but not get the down off of it, and reveals his position.
This is now like a straight-up brawl as both sides are forced into the middle against each other. The molly, that looks like a really nice molly. That might spread and set somebody on fire. If he backs up even a little bit, he's going to be very toasty out as the snow is on fire. But
it's science.
It's whatever.
Science.
Let's not talk
works,
about
right?
it. You know, you're healing yourself with a Red Bull, I guess, or a hot bull, if you will. But EU is just like wide in the open.
They had a little bit of a vulnerable point, but not getting that down has now revealed them out. All information's been fed back over to the CIS players, and you can see they're setting up the defensive line and just spraying down into it. But a couple of players from EU are trying to push along this northern spot, and it has just become a firing line right through the middle of this. Everybody is just lined up against each other, and it's still pretty close, Moses. It's 23-25 right now.
Yeah, it is very, very close, and really the advantage, and at least the compounds on the southern side goes to CIS as they've got that hard cover. But EU is no slouch. They're continuing to press.
Double has managed to get a flank back behind them. He could be a huge point right now for EU. If he can be a distraction and draw enough attention away from their frontline fights, that could give a little bit of a reprieve for these guys that are just trying to push in. These little solo plays could really turn this game around.
See if anything comes of it. And oh, baby, that circle again goes to CIS. And the pressure is now really on EU. And Double is going to try and do something. He's like enemy at the gates right now, dude. He's going to nail one, take down Makatow, but you can see that's true to life FPS right there. I promise you at this stage of the game.
That's the life you got to live on this. And look, everybody's just clustered behind the blocks.
My
they
God.
don't even
He's
see
a terrorist.
it coming. Double is just turning up big, following him with another one there. They have no idea where these shots are coming from. I think finally figured it out.
Someone got
but damage was done. He didn't get any kills off of it, but he managed to buy a lot of space and time. And EU is starting to capitalize off of this and crashing towards the center.
I don't think so. I think EU is getting shredded in the open right now.
They're trying to, though.
They're trying their damn best, but there's just nowhere to hide right now. They've got to make an absolute hero play. There's lots of people down, and you can see the EU side is just ticking away very, very quickly.
They've managed to get a little bit more control. This is the blood fight right here. Everybody is just vying for this position to see if they can find any open positions off of it. Mobesy's trying to play around the outside of it, but you can see Kivo's taking a lot of damage. It's just a firing line from CIS that's just halting everybody from EU.
EU's
now
keeping
down
it close.
to 13.
EU's keeping it close, but it really feels like there's a lot of people down, not a lot of reses going on.
I'm just glancing over at the map right now, and I think that there's about 6 people for EU down right now in comparison to 2 to 3 from CIS. There was that side flank that was trying to go off for EU, and they just lost a lot of members off of that.
If you guys are wondering, this is what the whole Area 51 thing is going to look like.
Just running up. There's not enough Naruto running at this point, though. And all right, here you go. You can see CIS very aware that they've got control. EU is down and out, and this is going to be CIS mounting a victory and going to be going on to take on North America yet again.
That is that was a lot of circles going to CIS, but it was really just a matter of control there for them as they maintained their compound hold, and really that whole eastern side was theirs, as it should be in CIS's case. They held down the east and they locked that game up.
Again, it feels like EU just going into that super center strategy off the get-go in that first circle and not trying to set up any form of defense on the zone just kind of allowed CIS in both of their victories to just kind of squeeze in back behind this, find a good opportunity, and just capitalize off of it.
Absolutely, and I mean in EU's case, they played a really nice set of games. They did their absolute best to maintain their strategy, to execute their strategy, but it just was not enough in a couple of cases because at the end of the day, you got to hit your shots, and sometimes the circle just is not in your favor.
Even if it's VSS shots, you gotta hit those when you go through with it. But I gotta say, it was a really crazy series. I mean, everybody as far as the shot callers for both of these regions, I really feel it kind of stepped it up. If we look at the games yesterday, they were very chaotic, to say the least.
Very chaotic.
And now you can start to see some strategy coming through, good comm lines, and all those shots from double earlier. Ugh, so good.
Yeah, very nice. I don't think considering how much damage he was doing, he was just doing a good job of harassing. If they had like maybe 2 or 3 people doing this kind of thing in the back lines, that might have made a big difference. But that last circle shift down to the south just spelled doom for EU as they had no real terrain to work with. They didn't really have much to do, and CIS was able to just wipe them off the map in the open, and that seals the deal for EU. It was a valiant effort, but CIS is going to move on and take another run at North America.
And that's going to be happening tomorrow because guess what, guys? We finished out the GLL Showdown, so now it's time to start getting everything set and ready to go for the Grand Slam. That's where you're going to see all the pro teams start to compete against each other. It's really kind of the best of the West is what's going to be going down, and I cannot wait to watch this.
We're getting ready here at the Grand Slam in beautiful Stockholm, Sweden. It's been a terrific time casting Showdown. We'll be back tomorrow for more, but for now, we're going to take a little bit of a break before the main show kicks off. I'm WTF Moses, joined by Matrim. We'll see you real soon.